He came home unannounced, and froze. His little girl was in the maid's arms, bruised, silent, and broken. What happened next would expose a horrifying secret that no parent ever wants to imagine, and change everything forever. If you have children or believe in justice, watch this to the very end, and subscribe right now because what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. Desmond Carter had it all: power, money, and influence, but nothing could have prepared him for what he saw that morning. He wasn't supposed to be home. The world believed he was still in Dubai attending the International Finance Summit, but after a sleepless night haunted by his daughter's tiny voice over the phone, he boarded a private jet without telling a soul. No press, no chauffeur, no security. Just a father desperate to surprise his child. By 9:47 a.m., he stepped into the grand foyer of his Los Angeles mansion. The scent of polished wood and expensive linen candles hung in the air. Too perfect. Too quiet. He carried two things: his briefcase and a small pink teddy bear his daughter had left in his car weeks ago. He planned to sneak up, hold her, and hear that laugh he'd been missing. But when he turned the corner into the living room, his heart stopped. His briefcase hit the marble floor with a sharp crack. Standing there was Greta, the maid, her arms locked tightly around Ava. But this wasn't a warm hug. Ava's face was bruised, her lips split, her body limp like a broken doll. Greta's cold eyes met his, unflinching, and she said in a voice void of remorse, "She fell again." Desmond's chest burned, his vision blurred, and in that moment he realized the truth every parent fears. His daughter had been suffering and he hadn't been there to protect her. If you're feeling the weight of this moment too, if you believe no child should endure this, hit that like button right now because this is where everything changes, and you won't believe what happens next. Desmond's hands trembled as he rushed forward, nearly shoving Greta aside as he scooped Ava into his arms. Her small body flinched and she whimpered like a wounded bird. He could feel every shallow breath, every tremor of pain. "Baby girl," he whispered, his voice breaking, "what happened?" But Ava didn't answer. She only pressed her swollen cheek against his chest as if hiding from the world. Desmond looked up at Greta, his eyes blazing. "What did you do to her?" Greta crossed her arms with that same icy expression and replied, "I told you. She fell. She's clumsy." Those words cut through him like glass. He pulled out his phone with shaking fingers and dialed 911, his voice sharp and controlled despite the storm inside him. "My daughter," he told the dispatcher. 5 years old, severe injuries, facial trauma, possible broken ribs. Send help. Now." Within minutes, flashing red lights filled the driveway, paramedics rushing inside. They carefully lifted Ava from his arms, their eyes narrowing at the sight of her injuries. One of them turned to Desmond, lowering his voice. "Sir, these don't look like accidents." The world tilted. Greta didn't flinch. She stood there, arms folded, and muttered, "She screams when she doesn't get her way. I disciplined her. She needed rules." Desmond's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white, but an officer stepped between them. "We'll handle her," the officer said firmly. As Greta was led away for questioning, Desmond knelt on the cold marble floor, his pristine white suit stained with his daughter's blood, and swore one thing: this would never happen again. If your heart is pounding right now, if you feel his rage, hit that like button because what happens next will change everything. The ambulance sirens wailed as Ava was lifted onto the stretcher, her tiny hand reaching for her father. Desmond grabbed it, holding on like he could keep her from slipping away. "I'm here, baby," he whispered, his throat tight. "Daddy's not going anywhere." She whimpered one word, "Hurts," and his chest ached so deeply it felt like it might split in two. He climbed into the ambulance without hesitation, ignoring the officers and flashing cameras gathering outside his gate. This was no longer about reputation, no longer about power. It was about his little girl. At the hospital, under the sterile glow of white lights, doctors swarmed around Ava. Desmond stood frozen, fists clenched at his sides, as they examined every bruise, every cut, every broken piece of her small body. The diagnosis came like a hammer: 2 fractured ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and older bruises, ones that had been healing for weeks. His stomach turned as he realized he'd missed the signs. He had been so consumed by work, so buried in grief over his late wife, that he hadn't seen what was right in front of him. "We'll need to run further tests," the doctor said, but Desmond wasn't listening anymore. He was staring through the glass window at Ava, who lay in a hospital bed clutching that same pink teddy bear, her swollen eye barely open. He swore in that moment that Greta would never hurt another child again. This wasn't just about justice. This was about vengeance. And if you believe no one should ever get away with this kind of cruelty, smash that like button because Desmond Carter was about to do something no billionaire father had ever done before. Desmond didn't sleep that night. He sat beside Ava's hospital bed, his hand wrapped around her tiny fingers as the machines around her beeped steadily, a cruel reminder of how close he had come to losing her. His white suit, once a symbol of power, now lay in a crumpled heap on the chair, stained with his daughter's blood and his own guilt. Every memory replayed in his mind, the missed calls, the quiet tone in Ava's voice during their last video chat, the way she had pointed at a bruise on her knee weeks ago and said, "Greta said I'm not fast enough." He thought it was just an odd phrase, a child's way of explaining a fall. He hadn't asked more questions. That mistake burned him from the inside out. By morning, the police had Greta in custody, but for Desmond, that wasn't enough. He didn't just want her arrested, he wanted the truth. He wanted every hidden piece of her history dragged into the light. And with his resources, that's exactly what he planned to do. He called his legal team, his private investigator, and gave them one command: I don't care what it costs. I want everything on Greta Langford. As he looked at Ava sleeping peacefully under the hospital's warm lights, he made another promise, a silent vow carved into his soul. He would never trust anyone with his daughter again. If you've ever felt the fire of guilt turn into unbreakable determination, hit that like button because what Desmond was about to uncover would not only shock him, it would expose something much darker than he ever imagined. The next afternoon, Desmond's private investigator returned with a thick file, and what it contained made his blood run cold. Greta Langford, age 52, had no criminal record, no formal complaints, but buried in silence were the stories of 7 families. 7. Each one had hired her, trusted her, and quietly dismissed her after incidents they chose never to report. A mother described finding her son locked in a dark pantry because he refused to eat his dinner. Another family admitted their daughter developed a stutter after months of being disciplined by Greta's cruel methods. None of it had ever reached the authorities because every parent had been too ashamed, too afraid of the judgment that would follow. And now Desmond realized he had almost joined that list. Another powerful parent who ignored the signs until it was nearly too late. His grip on the file tightened as he looked through photographs of other children, scared faces hidden behind black bars for privacy, each one a silent testament to what Greta had done. He turned to his lawyer, his voice sharp as steel. Reopen every single case. I want her buried in lawsuits. I want her name ruined. I want no one else to ever hire her again. For the first time in days, Desmond felt control returning to him, not because of his money but because of his resolve. This wasn't about reputation anymore. It was about making sure Greta could never hurt anyone again. If you believe every hidden monster deserves to be dragged into the light, smash that like button right now because the fight for Ava was only just beginning. The courtroom was colder than Desmond expected. Not in temperature but in the way every sound echoed, a gavel strike, the shuffle of papers, the quiet whispers from onlookers. Greta sat just feet away, handcuffed, her expression as sharp and emotionless as the day he found her holding Ava. No fear, no remorse, just that same twisted sense of superiority that had haunted him since that morning. Desmond stood tall, his once polished white suit replaced with a simple black one. He didn't want to look powerful today. He wanted to look human. The judge gave him permission to speak, and as he stepped forward, every eye in the room followed him. He glanced at Greta once, then turned his gaze to the bench. His voice was steady, but heavy with the weight of nights spent in hospital chairs. Your Honor, he began, she wasn't just an employee. I trusted her with my world, my daughter. I handed over my keys, my schedule, my home, and I believed she would keep Ava safe. But I was wrong. And that mistake nearly cost me everything. He paused, his fists clenching at his sides. When I came home and saw my child in her arms, bruised and broken, I realized something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I ignored the signs. I didn't listen to my little girl when she tried to speak in the only way she knew how, through her silence, her fear. And that silence almost destroyed her. Desmond turned his gaze to Greta now, his voice sharpening like glass. You preyed on that silence. You chose a child who lost her mother, a child too small to fight back, and you hurt her because you thought no one would believe her. But you didn't count on me coming home. You didn't count on the truth finding you. The judge leaned forward, her face unreadable, but the room was silent enough to feel the tension pressing in like a storm. You will pay for what you did, Desmond finished, his voice rising, not just to my daughter but to every child you've ever hurt and every parent you deceived. He turned back toward the bench. I will make sure of it. If you believe no parent should ever stop fighting for their child, smash that like button now because what happened next would change not just Ava's life, but countless others forever. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp and final, and the words that followed rang like thunder, 12 years without parole. For a moment, Desmond couldn't move. He just stood there, every muscle tight, his hands curled into fists at his sides. Greta didn't flinch. She didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't even blink. That coldness, that inhuman lack of remorse, made Desmond's stomach turn. But this time it didn't matter. She was done. The officers moved in, cuffing her tighter, leading her away. For the first time since that horrific morning, Desmond felt the faintest trace of relief, but it wasn't enough. He watched her disappear through the courtroom doors, and in that silence, he swore to himself this would never happen again. Not to Ava. Not to any child. Later that night, as he sat beside Ava's hospital bed, he brushed a hand over her soft curls. Her breathing was steady now. The doctors said she'd recover, though the emotional scars might take longer to fade. Desmond didn't care how long it took, he'd be there for every step. "Daddy's here," he whispered, and she stirred slightly, clutching her teddy bear tighter. That single, innocent gesture made his chest ache. He had money, power, and empire at his fingertips, but none of it had mattered when his little girl needed him. That realization hit harder than anything else. This wasn't just about punishing Greta anymore. It was about making sure no parent ever ignored the signs the way he had. And that's when an idea began to form. A promise, a mission that would stretch far beyond his mansion walls. He looked at Ava, then at the quiet hum of hospital lights above him, and made his decision. If you believe every child deserves to be safe and every monster should be exposed, smash that like button, because Desmond Carter was about to turn his guilt into something far more powerful than revenge. He was about to change everything. By the next morning, Desmond was a man with a mission. He had spent hours in the hospital chair, staring at Ava's tiny hand wrapped around his finger, and every second only sharpened his resolve. Money wasn't enough, not anymore. What good was wealth if it couldn't protect the most important person in his life? He called his legal team, his public relations firm, and a small army of experts before the sun had even risen. When they answered, still groggy from sleep, Desmond's voice was cold and unwavering. "We're building something. Today." Within hours, the Ava Carter Trust was born. Its purpose was simple but fierce. Mandatory background checks for every in-home caregiver, surprise evaluations to catch hidden abuse, and an anonymous reporting system so no parent would ever have to wonder if their child's cries were going unheard. "We'll push for legislation," Desmond ordered. "If the state won't protect our children, we will make them." He poured millions into the project without hesitation, every signature he signed feeling like a step closer to redemption. The media caught wind of it within days, headlines splashing across every screen. "Billionaire father launches child safety initiative after horrific abuse case." But for Desmond it wasn't about headlines. It was about Ava, sleeping peacefully at home now, her tiny body healing, her laugh starting to return. He would never forget the sound of her saying, "Hurts," but he would fight to make sure no other parent ever had to hear it. And as he stood in the playroom that evening, surrounded by her toys and drawings taped to the walls, he made her another silent promise. "No one will ever hurt you again." If you believe every parent should turn their pain into power, smash that like button, because this was just the beginning. Desmond Carter wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. Weeks passed, but Desmond's determination only grew sharper. The Ava Carter Trust exploded in scale, spreading from Los Angeles to every major city in the country. Background checks became stricter, new caregiver regulations were proposed in state legislatures, and thousands of parents signed up for the anonymous reporting system in the first week alone. For the first time in a long time, Desmond felt like he was finally undoing the damage, not just for Ava but for every child who had been silenced by fear. But even as his foundation gained momentum, his nights remained the same. Sitting beside Ava, reading her favorite books, drawing silly pictures with crayons, and holding her when nightmares woke her up. One night as he tucked her in, she looked at him with those wide, cautious eyes and asked, "Daddy, are you staying home tomorrow?" His throat tightened. "For as long as you want me to," he said, and for the first time she smiled without fear. That smile was worth more than every dollar he'd ever earned. The next day, as his team presented charts and strategies for the trust's expansion, Desmond stopped them mid-meeting. "We're adding unannounced in-home audits," he said. "If it saves one child, it's worth every cent." His advisors exchanged glances, some hesitant, but none dared argue. He wasn't a businessman right now. He was a father, and fathers don't compromise when it comes to their children. That evening, as he watched Ava color at the kitchen table, he realized something. The mansion no longer felt like an empty palace. It felt alive again, not because of wealth or grandeur but because of laughter, small, fragile but growing louder every day. If you believe no amount of power matters if it can't protect what truly matters, smash that like button, because Desmond Carter was about to prove that one father's love could shake the world. Desmond's fight reached new heights. The Ava Carter Trust was no longer just a program, it was a movement. Lawmakers invited him to speak at hearings. Parents from across the country sent him letters of gratitude, telling him his foundation had uncovered abusive nannies, negligent sitters, and even saved lives. But Desmond didn't care about applause, he cared about results. Late one night, while Ava slept soundly in her room, Desmond sat in his study, reviewing the latest reports. Over 300 cases had been flagged in the first month alone. 300 children who might have been living his nightmare. His hands trembled as he signed another round of funding approvals. Never again, he whispered to himself. The next morning, Ava came running into his office, clutching her favorite teddy bear, her laughter bright and full of life. "Daddy, play with me," she cried. He set his pen down immediately. No meeting, no deal, no billionaire summit in Dubai mattered more than that moment. He knelt down, lifted her into his arms and spun her around, her giggles echoing through the halls like music. This was why he fought. This was why the world could wait. But outside those mansion walls, not everyone was happy. Greta's defense attorneys had filed an appeal, and whispers of retaliation swirled in the press. Reporters questioned his motives. Critics accused him of exploiting his daughter's tragedy for attention. Desmond ignored them all. He didn't need the world to believe in him. He just needed Ava to believe she was safe. That night he sat by her bed, brushing her hair gently. "I'm never leaving you again," he whispered, and she smiled in her sleep. If you believe no father should ever have to choose between his work and his child's safety, smash that like button, because Desmond Carter was just getting started, and the world was about to find out what happens when a billionaire fights for love, not power. The appeal hearing was a storm, but Desmond walked into that courtroom with fire in his eyes. Greta sat there, the same cold stare, the same lack of remorse, as if she hadn't stolen a child's laughter. But this time, Desmond wasn't just a grieving father. He was armed with evidence, witnesses, and a tidal wave of public support. His legal team presented testimony from 7 other families who had once stayed silent, their voices trembling as they revealed years of hidden cruelty. The room shifted. The judge leaned forward. Greta's expression finally cracked. Desmond didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His focus stayed on one thing: Ava. As the gavel struck, the appeal was denied. Greta's sentence not only stood but was extended with new charges from the reopened cases. For the first time she looked afraid. Desmond turned and walked out, not even glancing back. Outside, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but he ignored them all. He drove straight home, where Ava was waiting in the living room, holding up a crayon drawing. "It's us, Daddy," she said proudly. In the picture he was smiling. She was smiling. Even the sun had a face. He knelt down, hugged her tight, and whispered, "That's perfect." And in that moment he realized this was the only victory that mattered. The world could keep its headlines, he only cared about her laughter. That night as he tucked her in, she looked at him with sleepy eyes and said, "You came home, Daddy. You really came home." He kissed her forehead, his heart breaking and healing all at once. If you believe that love is the strongest weapon in the world, smash that like button, because Desmond Carter's battle wasn't just about justice. It was about proving that no darkness is stronger than a father's promise. Months later, the Carter mansion was no longer a monument to loneliness. It was alive with warmth, laughter, and the quiet hum of a family healing. Ava was running through the halls again, her giggles chasing away the echoes of silence that once haunted the place. Desmond had kept his promise. He never left her side. He read her bedtime stories, sat with her through every doctor's appointment, and celebrated each small victory. Her first day back at school, her first smile without fear, and the night she finally slept without waking from nightmares. But it wasn't just Ava who had changed. Desmond had changed too. The man who once measured his life in board meetings and billion-dollar deals now measured it in moments. A purple crayon drawing, a shared bowl of cereal, the simple words, "I love you, Daddy." The Ava Carter Trust had become a national force, and legislation for in-home caregiver oversight was on the governor's desk. Desmond stood at a press conference, cameras flashing, but his eyes found only one face, Ava's, watching from the front row, holding her teddy bear. "This," he said into the microphone, "is what we fight for. No child should ever be afraid in their own home." His voice didn't shake. He didn't need notes. He spoke like a father who had walked through fire and refused to burn. That night, back at home, Ava climbed onto his lap, resting her head against his chest. "Daddy," she whispered, "are we safe now?" He hugged her tightly, kissed her hair and said, "Forever." If you believe in the power of love to rebuild what the world tried to break, smash that like button because this is more than a story, it's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, family is the light that never goes out.